Hi, I'm Harley Rouda from Orange County, California. My district represents about 80% of the coastline there. And what I want to talk about is the intersection of infrastructure and climate change. I talk a lot with my constituents about how climate change is the greatest threat facing humankind. And I predicate that on the fact that where we have built our homes, our cities, our farms, are all based on predictable weather patterns over the last 1,000 years. And if you shift those predictable weather patterns by changing the ambient temperatures of the atmosphere in a matter of a few short generations, where we have built our homes, our cities, and our farms have been built in the wrong place. So we're talking about an infrastructure issue far greater than the widening of the 405 in Orange County. And I'm hopeful that I can get from you maybe some ideas where in the infrastructure that you have participated in, that you have built, that you can share with the committee specific examples where you have used infrastructure as an opportunity to address climate change. Please.
As I said earlier in my remarks, passenger rail is the most efficient way with the most minimal carbon footprint to move people through urban areas. So at Amtrak, we have invested in a new Acela train set to increase the capacity in the Northeast Corridor by 40% over the next 8 years. Second, we had the most foul diesel locomotives in our national network. I think but for being Amtrak, owned by the federal government, we wouldn't have gotten a waiver from the EPA. We marshaled our resources and just placed a large order to buy Tier 4, the most modern diesel electro locomotives. So I think we all have that same obligation to, in all of our businesses, to face up to what global warming really means in our businesses and make real commitments. In a prior life, I was the chairman of the International Air Transport Association, IATA, and we adopted the first global framework around aviation to reduce aviation emissions 2% a year, ongoing from 2015, and to move to carbon neutrality by 2050, but by 2025 to be on a reduction basis. So I think that you can find many of those kinds of concrete examples in industry.
So in your planning process for any infrastructure project, and look, I know we've got extreme overdue maintenance. The U.S. spends about 2.5% of our GDP on infrastructure, which is about half of what the European Union nations spend and about a third of what China spends. What are you seeing, though, in the long-term planning in these projects, taking into account the impact of climate change and the fact that there's estimates of 200 million climate change refugees by 2050, which will be impacting in so many different ways?
We do it from a macro perspective of continuing to reduce Amtrak's carbon footprint by year with a goal across the top of the company. Our goal is to really reduce our footprint and gain efficiencies of about 2% a year, but that's going to need to accelerate given the statistics that you just gave us.
Okay. Anybody else on the panel who would like to weigh in? Please.
I know in the ports community, the Corps of Engineers and our ports think about climate change whenever they're thinking about channels, about jetties, about the structures and the things that are in and adjacent to the water, which may have to survive higher wave heights, different temperatures, et cetera. And then within the ports industry itself, there's a lot of retrofitting of engines. The towboat community, they're repowering their towboats to use cleaner, greener engines. And then in the Northwest, we have a big focus on hydropower production. It is a green, renewable, outstanding source of energy. We're blessed with it in the Northwest, and we're always holding that up as a high priority to preserve.
I can't let that moment go by to not point out that if everybody would give up their cars and get on trains and California high-speed rail and Lausanne and the capital corridors, that's the biggest impact we can have on the carbon footprint.
Mr. Congressman, we don't build infrastructure at UPS, but one of the things, certainly our investment in alternative fuel fleets has been significant. It's been significant for the last 10 years. We've reduced our carbon footprint by about 18% since 2007. We've got close to 10,000 alternative fuel vehicles out there. And speaking of the railroads, one of the things that's not well known is that we probably move about 3,000 containers a day on the rails. We've been one of the largest customers of the rails. So rails are important to not just our company, but to our industry as well.
Thank you for your comments, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman.